Good evening, good evening, good evening, and welcome to this week's exciting episode of Dramatis Personae, the only queer Star Trek read-through show on the entire internet, possibly. This week we are doing Similitude, an Enterprise episode, and we will talk more about that in a second. But first of all, let me remind you about our current charity. We're currently raising for AKT, which is a charity in the UK, used to be known as the Albert Kennedy Trust. They've currently gotten a community appeal on, and they say, over the past year, the importance of community has become clearer than ever. Not only have we navigated a pandemic, but those most marginalised within the LGBTQ plus community have continued to face abuse and violence, including LGBTQ people of colour and trans and non-binary people. It's also been an incredibly difficult time for the LGBTQ young people that AKT supports, who are living in a hostile environment or are facing homelessness. The majority of these young people have experienced abuse or rejection at home for simply being who they are. During the first lockdown, the number of new young people who needed our help increased by 118% compared to the same period the year before. And today, our renewal numbers continue to rise. This past year, AKT has supported over 700 young people across the country into safe homes and better futures. We've had to increase capacity in service delivery to manage this. Now, this number doesn't actually include the young people who've been supported and signposted just on live chat. So we're expecting the number of young people who need help to continue to rise. And in order to do that, we need to fundraise as a community. So your solidarity and support helps AKT continue their work and ensure that no young person has to choose between a safe home and being who they are. And they've got a number of numbers here. So £35, for example, could cover the cost of a safe accommodation for one night for a young person to get them off the streets and on the journey to independence. £10 could keep a young person safe with a basic mobile phone. £6 can cover the cost of a small hygiene kit for a young person, including face covering, hand sanitizer, soap, and other toiletries. Basically, every little helps. So if you would like to make a donation to AKT, you can find a link. I think it's directly above the video here, or somebody will put a link in the chat below or to the side or wherever it is on your screen. But anyway, you can find it there. I'll be talking more about AKT in the halftime show, which I'm afraid doesn't include Shakira or Beyonce. It's just me telling you more about AKT. It's depressing, Max, but apparently after the last time I did that thing with the sequins and everything fell out, I'm just not allowed to do it again. So let's move on to the wonderful cast and crew of Similitude. We don't have a huge cast this evening. There's not many roles. It's an entirely ship-based show, so we're not going off the ship for this entire episode. But what we do have is we have the daddy of our group, Randall C. Brown.
Hi, I am playing an animated version of Jonathan Archer.
Excellent. And on the subject of Jonathan Archer, who, of course, was ably played by Scott Bakula in the original and less good version of the show, he was famously on a show called Quantum Leap. I don't know if you've heard of it, Randall. It was around a while. Anyway, the guy who did the music for that was Velton Ray Bunch, and he actually did the soundtrack for this episode as well. So a bit of Quantum Leap trivia for you there. Next up, we have the ever-butch Maxim Rex.
Hey there, I'm playing Trip Tucker. And kind of Trip.
Kind of Trip. What's going to happen there? We have the lovely Steffi. And I've just seen her caption.
Hello, yes, I will be playing... And I will be playing Sub-Commander to Paul. And after all, what else would a Sub-Commander do?
Command submarines, which I assume is what you mean. Yeah. Then we have the beautiful Sarah Horton.
I'm playing Travis and Hoshi.
Yeah, you are. We have the ever shiny Ben Church.
Hello, I'm playing Malcolm Reed.
Apparently there's somebody called David Crow who's playing Dr. Flots. I've not heard of him. He doesn't sound very good. And we also have Tiny Rex players playing young and team versions of Trip. So can we get their faces? Or are they being shy? Come on, guys. We want to.
Come on, Rek'Sai.
Hey, how you doing? And smaller. Come on. Hey, oh, it's the big one. How you doing? I've met you before. Excellent. We will see you later, and we will do that. And narrating, keeping us all on our toes and trying to hold this show together, we have the lovely Lita Christman.
Hello, I am indeed human duct tape, rubber bands, and bubblegum.
I mean, I think Steffi might be interested in chatting to you later. Without any more, let's move on to the actual show, and I will hand over to the lovely Lita for Similitude.
Part 1, in the armory. The whole crew stands together, the senior crew on the upper level, archers delivering a eulogy.
The most difficult task facing any captain, any crew, is the loss of a shipmate. We've come here to honor one of our own. In the time we knew him, he showed us just how much one life can truly matter. We will never forget what he did for us and for the ship he loved so much. We will go forward with renewed determination to complete this mission so that his sacrifice won't have just been for the people on this ship, but for all the citizens of Earth.
A torpedo case serves as a coffin in the center of it all. The person laid out in the torpedo case is Charles Trip Tucker. 2 weeks earlier, in T'Pol's quarters, Tucker and T'Pol lie on their sides, massaging each other's heels. Tucker is shirtless.
We just reroute the system taps, compress the antimatter stream before it reached the injectors.
That will stabilize the warp field.
Every simulation I run back comes back with the same result. We'll be able to cruise at warp 5.0 with no field fluctuation. I'm talking about a ride so smooth that you could build a house of cards on the warp reactor.
If we can maintain high warp for extended periods, we can cover the expanse more quickly.
Which boosts our chances of finding the Xindi weapons in time.
He presses into her foot, and T'Pol winces.
To the left.
Oh, sorry. You get me talking about the engines and I forget where I am. Don't know what it is about fine-tuning a piece of machinery.
Lie on your back.
He does, and she kneels by his head. She begins massaging his neck.
You know, you made this sound a whole lot worse than it is.
Advanced neuropressure can place great demands on the body.
Then his shoulders.
Well, I have to say that so far it's a piece of cake.
We haven't gotten to the more challenging procedures.
Then the ribcage.
Well, I'm always up for a challenge.
Breathe.
Later in engineering.
Tucker the bridge.
Archer?
We're all set down here. I'll need at least 4.9 to get the plasma hot enough to compress the stream.
You heard the man, Travis, 4.9.
Aye, sir.
The Enterprise goes to warp. On the bridge.
4.5, 4.6, 4.7, 4.8.
The ship vibrates.
The warp field is fluctuating.
4.9.
Back in engineering.
Initializing stream compression.
On Tucker's monitor, a fat red line turns into a thin white line. The engine purrs like a kitten.
Damn, that's a beautiful sound.
Back on the bridge.
Field fluctuations have dropped to 0.
We just got our second wind.
There's a big bump. Crew members lose their footing. Alarms go off, and the fat red line on Tucker's monitor is back and fatter.
Something's flooding the intake manifolds.
Drop to impulse.
I've lost helm control.
Trip, status.
I got a primary injector flare. I'm shutting down. It's not responding, Captain.
Bang! Flames sputter out from the reactor. Tucker climbs on top. Back on the bridge, sparks are flying from consoles and bulkheads. A fire starts at T'Pol's station.
The flare is causing a system-wide overload.
In engineering, Tucker manually shuts the engines down, but something explodes, throwing him from the top of the engines to the floor. The back of his head hits the ground. Hard. Outside the ship, the Enterprise drops out of warp into a purple fog. Back on the bridge.
Fires reported on B and C deck. Emergency crews en route.
Helm control is still down.
Analysis.
Some kind of polaric field, approximately 11,000 kilometers in diameter. Composition unknown. I'll need more time to complete a detailed scan.
Is that what stopped us?
It's a logical conclusion.
Archer surveys the ship's surroundings on the main view screen.
Keep scanning.
Numerous injuries throughout the ship, mostly minor, except for one. Commander Tucker. He's been taken to sickbay.
The nucleonic particles are being drawn to the hull.
Polarize the hull plating.
I already tried that, sir. No effect.
Then purge the intake manifolds and shut all the exhaust ports.
Box to Captain Archer.
Go ahead.
Would you come down to sickbay?
On my way. Run a full sensor scan. I want to know what we're dealing with.
Aye, sir.
In engineering, T'Pol supervises the mending of a big hole in the bulkhead. A crewman welds.
Report.
When we entered the field, nucleonic particles flooded the manifolds, causing the injector flare. If Commander Tucker hadn't shut down the reactor, we would have had a breach.
How much time before we can get the engines back online?
We're still running diagnostics. The damage is significant. It could take weeks. Commander Tucker's going to have his hands full.
You'll be supervising the repairs. I've just come from sickbay. Trip's in a coma. He has extensive neural damage. Dr. Phlox says we have to prepare for the possibility that Trip won't survive.
Outside, the Enterprise hangs in the field of fog. Particles of some kind dot the surface of the hull, and more flow from the field onto the ship magnetically. In sickbay, Tucker lies on a bed, his head wrapped in bandage. Monitoring devices are attached to his forehead, and an oxygen tube runs under his nose.
How is he?
His condition's unchanged. I'd like to show you something. This is one of the more interesting members of my little menagerie, a Lysarian desert larvae. Its epidermal layer secretes a viral suppressant that I use as a salve for cuts and bruises.
How does this relate to Trip?
The larvae have another, somewhat more controversial property. When implanted with the DNA from another species, it exactly replicates that species' life cycle, albeit at a rapidly accelerated rate.
Becomes a clone.
Essentially, but one that is born, grows old, and dies in approximately 15 days. The Lysarians call them mimetic symbiotes. They're a closely guarded secret. Very few people know of their existence.
And you want to do this with Trip. Use his DNA to grow a symbiote.
To harvest its neural tissue for transplant. There's no guarantee that human DNA will even stimulate the larvae's growth cycle, but as it stands now, it may be Commander Tucker's only chance for survival. To ensure the tissue's compatibility, I'll have to wait until the symbiote reaches Commander Tucker's present physical age, and then I can excise the tissue from a non-critical region of the symbiote's cerebrum. It would experience no discernible side effects and should be able to live off its normal lifespan.
It's 15-day lifespan.
I don't make this proposal lightly, Captain, but I am obligated to provide you with all available options.
Ready room, Archer sits at his desk, troubling over a pad. The door chimes.
Come in.
T'Pol enters.
We sent out an EV team. They retrieved a sample of the substance accumulating on the hull.
She hands him a flat, gray, rough, amorphous solid. It looks almost like a flat rock.
Multiple hits with the plasma rifle were required to dislodge it. It's composed of highly charged particles, mostly ferric ions, but there are several elements that we can't identify.
Archer sets the sample down on the desk. His mug slides across the desk and attaches itself to the sample.
And it's highly magnetic. So far, the danger to the ship seemed negligible.
But the longer we remain in the field, the more these particles build up. Do whatever you have to, but we need to get those engines back online.
He picks up the sample and hands it back to her.
Understood. Regarding the Lysarian procedure Dr. Phlox proposed, may I ask if you've reached a decision?
I approved it.
Are you aware that the Lysarian Prime Conclave has banned the creation of symbiotes?
We don't answer to the Lysarian Prime Conclave.
Symbiotes are living, conscious entities. We'll be growing a sentient being for the sole purpose of harvesting tissue.
I'm aware of the ethical implications. If we weren't in the Expanse, maybe my decision would be different, but we've got to complete this mission. Earth needs Enterprise. Enterprise needs Trip. It's as simple as that.
In sickbay, Phlox applies a device to Tucker's neck, taking a blood sample. He regards the sample, then crosses to a large, transparent, cylindrical jar filled with amber liquid. At the bottom lies a round ball, the larvae. Phlox reaches a gloved hand into the jar and pulls out the larvae, then injects it with Tucker's blood. He carries the larvae to the bed, where he inserts a probe. Some clear liquid oozes out. He looks at a monitor, where he watches a collection of cells magnified by the probe. They begin to separate. Outside the Enterprise, it hangs in the field, streaked across its surface with particles. It almost looks like a sunken ship.
Captain Starlog, supplemental. The engines are still down and the nucleonic particles continue to build up on the hull. It's been 2 days since Dr. Phlox initiated the procedure to grow the symbiote.
In sickbay, the lights are dim. Phlox leads Archer to a large tub with a human fetus floating in it, connected to unseen machinery by an umbilical cord.
It's rather sensitive to light at this stage, but by tomorrow morning, if all goes well, we'll have a healthy baby boy on our hands.
Archer considers the fetus with concern and wonder. Later, a newborn baby cries from inside a glove box. Phlox holds a milk bottle.
Perfect genetic duplicate, right down to the birthmark on his right side.
He certainly sounds healthy.
And hungry. Excuse me.
Phlox hands her the bottle and picks the child up.
There. Oh, it's been some time since I've handled a newborn.
He takes back the bottle and begins to nurse the baby.
But I see I haven't lost my touch.
The baby suckles happily.
3 days ago, he was just another one of your creatures, something you kept on a shelf.
He's certainly come a long way in a short time.
In a short time, he'll be a lot older. Have you thought of where he's going to live?
Why not right here? I can't think of a more stimulating environment for a developing young mind, and I'll be able to keep a close watch on his development.
Sounds like you found yourself a new roommate.
Now all I need to do is find him a name. The crew's been offering suggestions, but nothing sounds right. Stephen, Enrique, Dennis. Dennis? You see my dilemma.
I'm sure you'll think of something.
Later in sickbay.
Chief Medical Officer's log. After much deliberation, I have finally thought of a name for this newest addition to our crew.
Phlox cradles the swaddled infant in his arms.
It's all right, Sim. It's all right.
He coos at the baby and bounces him lightly.
Lucky for me, denobulans require very little sleep. I'm at a loss to understand how human adults endure the REM cycle interruptions that accompany the teething stage.
Phlox changes the baby's diapers. It looks to be several months old.
Though I knew what to expect, I can't help but be astonished by Sim's rapid physical development. As a side note, I may have stumbled across an effective fertilizer for my Orsic fern.
Later, Sim now appears to be 6 or 7. Phlox and Hoshi sit on the floor, listening to the boy read from a book.
Can we just skip to the part where the Martian machines attack? Oh. Those who have never seen a living Martian can scarcely imagine the strange horror of its appearance.
That's very good.
Can we just skip to the part where the Martian machines attack?
We just showed you this book. How do you know about the Martian machines?
My mom read it to me.
Your mom?
Uh-huh. I think it's chapter 10.
It's become quite evident that Sim's remarkable scholastic progress goes far beyond an aptitude for learning.
In the mess hall, Sim, now resembling a preteen, sits at a table, his meal off to the side. Over an open box with some tools, he fiddles with an electronic device.
He's remembering things that happened to Trip when Trip was his age.
So the older he grows, the more of Trip's life he'll recall.
There are some species that rely solely on genetic sequencing to pass on their cultural memories. Evidently, humans have a similar capacity. This could be an important discovery. He certainly possesses Commander Tucker's curiosity. This morning, he took apart my medical tricorder.
He's starting to look like Trip.
And he's beginning to ask questions. Where did I come from? Where's my mother and father? Why am I here?
It's only been 3 days and he's already beginning to realize how different he is.
He's going to have to be told the truth, and soon.
I gave the order that created him. I should be the one to explain why.
In a corridor, Porthos skitters around a corner, followed by Sim.
Whoa, where do you think you're off to?
I was trying to teach him to fetch.
Don't take it personally. Fetching isn't his style.
Oh, sorry, Captain. I was in the middle of giving Porthos his physical. I only turned my back for a moment.
It's all right. Is he okay?
Yes, indeed. He's in peak physical condition, which is more than I can say for myself.
It's almost time for his dinner. Do you want to help me feed him?
Sure.
Archer hands the little dog over to the lad.
Come on.
In Archer's quarters, Archer enters with Porthos's bowl and opens a pouch of food.
There's nothing Porthos likes more than dinner time.
Porthos bounds into the room and sits on an ottoman. Good dog.
Can he do any tricks?
Or haven't taught him any. Mostly what he does is eat, sleep, and not fetch. Just fill it up halfway.
Okay.
Sim begins to fill the bowl with food.
I used to have a dog. His name was Bedford. He was so big. I could ride him like a horse.
Is that right?
Sim spots a picture on the shelf.
That's Zephram Cochrane. Cochrane. He invented warp drive.
That's right, he did.
Dr. Phlox says your dad helped design the Warp 5 engine.
Yeah, there's a picture of him right there.
He indicates another photo.
And this is me on my first day of flight school.
Did you always want to be a starship captain?
As long as I can remember.
Why?
It's what I was meant to do.
Bet it's a fun job.
It has its moments. Let me show you something.
In the cargo bay, Sim flies a Venture Star model with a handheld remote control. Porthos watches.
Keep the nose up. That's right.
It pulls a little to the left.
Trim the port aileron.
That feels better. My dad says I should be an engineer, but my mom thinks I should study architecture. But I want to do what you do, be a starship captain.
He flies the model deftly around a pole hanging down from the ceiling.
You know what's weird?
What?
My parents call me Trip, but everyone here calls me Sim. Where's my mom and dad? Are they back on Earth?
That is a little difficult to answer.
Sim looks up at Archer, taking his attention off the model. It crashes into a railing.
Oof.
The model falls to the ground.
It's broken.
Nothing a little glue won't remedy. I've crashed it plenty of times myself.
I miss my parents.
Come with me. Part of you, something inside of you that Trip needs. Dr. Phlox is going to have to perform an operation.
Will it hurt?
We're just going to take a break due to a technical problem, and we will be right back after these animated images. Welcome back and thank you for your patience. We return you now to your regularly scheduled episode.
Inside sickbay,
Dr. Flox says I'm not allowed to go in here.
It's okay.
Phlox pulls back the curtains around Trip's bed. Sim takes it all in.
He's Trip.
That's right.
My parents, they're not really mine. They're his.
Yes.
So that time I put a garden snake in Liz's dollhouse, that wasn't me.
No.
So I'm just some kind of copy of him.
Oh, you're more than that, Sim.
Phlox looks over with concern. Archer and Phlox exchange a glance.
You have Trip's memories, but you also have your own memories, the ones you're making here on Enterprise.
How long have I lived here?
You were born only 4 days ago.
I feel older.
It's hard to understand. I know. There's part of you, something inside of you that Trip needs. Dr. Phlox is going to have to perform an operation.
Will it hurt?
Not at all. You won't feel a thing.
Doctors always say that.
When Phlox says it, it's the truth.
Sim nods gravely.
Can we go fix the model now?
Sure.
Sim walks off. Archer and Phlox exchange a knowing look. As Archer leaves, Phlox pulls the curtains back around Trip's bed. Outside, the Enterprise continues to hang in the field of nucleonic particles, almost completely covered by them.
Captain Starlog, supplemental. Enterprise has been incapacitated for 7 days.
Sim walks down a corridor, now a young adult.
During that time, Sim has practically become a member of the crew. I've assigned him to engineering, where he's been assisting T'Pol in the ongoing effort to repair the engines.
In engineering, T'Pol sits at a desk, working intently at a console with a device in her hand. Sim approaches and hands her a pad.
Wave guides for the primary port bypass. I think I've made some progress.
This looks promising.
They're showing a night at the opera tonight. Marx Brothers. Wondered if you're planning to go.
I'll be reviewing the field coil equations. They need to be finished in time for tomorrow's reactor test.
Oh, what about dinner? Want to grab a bite?
I appreciate the offer, but I'm afraid I have to work late into the evening. Ensign Massaro is running a diagnostic on the plasma assembly. I'd like you to assist her.
Yes, ma'am.
She turns away and begins working at a terminal in the wall.
It's because I'm different, isn't it? The reason you don't want to do anything with me. I guess it must be weird being with someone like me. 5 days ago, I was wearing diapers.
I simply believe that our attention should be focused on the ship's engines, at least until the current situation is resolved.
I probably won't be around after the current situation is resolved.
A comm beeps.
Archer to T'Pol.
Go ahead.
Please come to my ready room.
On my way.
Sim watches her with a hint of scorn as she walks away. In the ready room, the porthole is covered in particles.
Warp drive should be functional in about 2 weeks.
I'm afraid that won't be soon enough.
Sir,
According to Malcolm, the accumulation on the hull is generating a diamagnetic field. It's having a dampening effect. The more the particulate builds up, the more powerful the field becomes. In another 4 days, every system on the ship will be offline. If we don't make it out of here by then, we never will.
And that is the end of part 1. Let me tell you very briefly, first of all, fantastic work from the Rex players there. Perfect for the role. Did really well, both of you. Thank you very much for your time this evening. Let me tell you more about AKT, who are the charity we're supporting at the moment. We're currently at £100 of the 150 we want to raise for AKT. And let me tell you the story of Chris. Chris could no longer live at home when their family found out that they were bisexual. With no family support and no friends to stay with, they had to sleep in a park. Isolated and vulnerable, they were approached by men offering drugs or places to stay in exchange for sex. They found out about AKT from a friend, and AKT supported them to access a shelter. They continued doing their art course at college, and after a few weeks at the shelter, moved in with a couple who are part of AKT's host program. Chris said, "Adam and Jack are like big brothers to me. They make me feel like their home is my home and are always available for advice about everyday things. I wouldn't be as settled as I am if it wasn't for them." Chris is looking forward to continuing their studies by going to university and moving into private rented accommodation with help from AKT's Rainbow Starter Pack. AKT believe no young person should have to choose between a safe home and being who they are. If you'd like to support AKT's work with young LGBTQ+ people facing or experiencing homelessness, please click on the Tiltify link above or below, wherever it is on the screen. I think it depends on the device you're on. AKT, by the way, are a charity that I've worked personally with, and I can tell you that they're a fantastic organisation who are doing really, really important work. So, that's just a personal thing from me. I think it's well worth doing. Now, we are ready to go for part 2. So let's cue that up. Sorry, I'm just checking everybody's ready. Yep, you're cool. Right, we're ready to go with part 2. So I will hand you back to Nita, our narrator.
Part 2. Inside the mess hall, Sim, now fully resembling Tucker, eats while consulting a pad. Reed approaches him.
Key lime pie.
I suddenly realized it was my favorite dessert. Now I know why.
Do these memories just come to you?
Well, the older I get, the more I remember. It's like I've lived this whole other life. I can't explain it.
I can't imagine it. You wanted to ask me about something?
Yeah, I did. Do you think it's possible to redirect the phase cannon so they can fire back into the hull?
I suppose so. Why?
I want to try and blast off enough of that particulate so we can open up the launch bay doors.
Is someone planning on going somewhere?
All we need to do is build up enough momentum to get the ship out of here, right?
Right.
Well, we've got 2 perfectly good engines sitting in the launch bay. If we string a couple of grappler lines between the shuttle pods and the ship, we can tow ourselves clear.
The shuttle pods don't generate that kind of thrust. We'd never build up enough momentum to get clear of the field in time.
Leave that to me.
He hands over a pad. In T'Pol's quarters, T'Pol sits on her bed, reading a heavy, ancient-looking book. The door chimes. She puts the book away, stands up, and answers the door.
Can I come in?
She stands aside, and he comes in.
Did you have a chance to look at my calculations?
I reviewed them thoroughly.
And?
She picks up a pad.
A fusion outburn has never been attempted with a shuttlepod engine.
That doesn't mean it won't work.
I agree. Despite the risks, I believe it's our best option.
So you're going to recommend the plan to the captain?
I already have. Was there something else?
You and Trip used to spend a lot of time here together.
I was instructing him in the practice of Vulcan neuropressure.
I remember we were lying right there, working the neural nodes on each other's feet, talking about the warp engines, how I was hoping to modify them.
How Commander Tucker was hoping to modify them.
Right. Commander Tucker. You know, he was really starting to enjoy those sessions with you.
They were helping him sleep.
I'm not sure that's the only reason.
What do you mean?
Was there ever anything between you and Trip?
If you're referring to a romantic relationship, no.
The reason I ask is, well, you're all I think about, if you know what I mean. And I'm not talking about an adolescent crush. That was 2 days ago. This is much more serious, the way I feel about you. Anyway, what's driving me crazy is I don't know if these feelings are mine or his.
I can't answer that.
I didn't mean to make you feel uncomfortable.
I'm not uncomfortable.
I just thought I should tell you this while I still have the chance.
In the ready room, Archer sits at his desk, consulting his desktop monitor with a pad in hand.
Come in.
Sim enters.
I want to pilot one of the shuttle pods.
That's out of the question.
It's my plan. I think I should have a say in how it's implemented.
This is a dangerous procedure. You've never flown a shuttle pod before.
Yes, I have. Trip has thousands of hours of flying time, and I have his memories.
I can't jeopardize this ship on the strength of those memories. Mayweather and Reed will pilot the shuttle pods. I want you to coordinate from the bridge. Paul will assist you.
You're so worried something will happen to me, aren't you? You want to make sure I'm around because you need part of my brain.
Yeah, that's part of it.
So your concern for my safety is really about saving Trip.
My main concern is that this plan work. If we don't make it out of here in the next 6 hours, it won't matter whether Trip survives or not. We'll all be dead.
On the bridge, Sim stands at Reed's station.
I've realigned the targeting scanners. They're set for close proximity.
Phase cannons are charged and ready.
Archer nods and Sim fires from his station. Outside, the phase cannons blast at particles on the hull.
Try the doors.
They're still frozen.
Sim fires. The phase cannons fire at the launch bay doors and the particles disappear. The doors open.
Archer to shuttle pods 1 and 2. You are clear to launch.
In shuttle pod 1, Reed sits in the pilot's seat.
Acknowledged.
In shuttle pod 2, Travis sits in the pilot's seat.
Shuttle pod 2 acknowledged.
The shuttle pods drop from the bay doors and fly to Enterprise's bow. They fire grappler lines, which attach to the front of the ship. On the bridge...
Whenever you're ready.
Set the overburn ratio. We'll start at 0.175.
Acknowledged.
0.175.
Prepare to initiate on my mark. Now.
Shuttle pod's engines fire. They strain against the tug.
1,000 kilodynes.
Thrust vector holding steady.
Archer watches the two shuttle pods through the main view screen.
Come on.
The interiors of the shuttle pods begin to shake.
2,000 kilodynes. Engine temperatures rising.
The shuttle pods continue to strain.
I'm reading 0 forward momentum.
2,500 kilodynes. Engine temperatures nearing critical.
We're still not moving.
Come on.
Increase the overburn ratio another 30%.
Captain,
Go ahead.
Increasing 30%.
The shuttle pod's engines glow brighter, and the sound of their hum becomes intense.
I've got a temperature warning light.
I'm reading 500 degrees above critical.
Sharp sparks begin to fly in both shuttle pods as alarms sound. The shuttle pods shake violently.
Their systems are overloading.
Sim.
A few more seconds.
They won't last a few more seconds.
Sorry, Sim. Archer to the shuttle pods.
The ship shudders. Outside, we begin to see the Enterprise lurch forward, slowly, with the shuttle pods.
We're moving 0.62 kilometers per hour.
The shuttle pods are filled with smoke, but they no longer spark or shake.
12 kilometers per hour and accelerating.
How much do we need?
Right. At this speed, we'll emerge from the field in 6.1 hours.
That's good enough. Archer to shuttle pods 1 and 2. Come on home. Well done.
Thanks, Captain.
In sickbay, Phlox sits at his desk looking pensive. He is on the verge of tears. Archer enters.
You wanted to see me?
There's been a development.
I'm listening.
Sim won't survive the transplant.
You told me you could remove the tissue without harming him.
That assessment was based on symbiotes grown from Lysarian DNA. My tests on Sim show that human-based symbiotes are not as resilient.
Archer turns toward the door.
If I excise the quantity of neural tissue that I need to save Commander Tucker, Sim will die.
Archer pauses.
I'm sorry, Captain.
Archer leaves, his head hanging. In engineering,
Your shift ended 90 minutes ago.
Just want to get these initiators in place.
You've been working for 18 straight hours.
If you had 5 days left, would you spend them sleeping? Besides, tomorrow morning I'm walking into sickbay to donate some of my unneeded neural tissue, which means that pretty soon I'll be answering to the real Trip, and if I know him, he's going to want these engines in as good a shape as they can be.
I haven't commended you on the successful implementation of your plan. You saved the ship.
I appreciate that.
Lysarian desert lava.
I wanted to learn something about my own species, so I've been doing a little research, mostly on lifespans. Did you know that at one time in history, human beings lived an average of only 35 years? The average Vulcan lifespan was only 40.
Your point?
Just that both species expend a lot of effort to change those statistics. I guess it's just natural for people to want to stick around for as long as possible.
later, in sickbay, Sim sits, looking pensive. Archer and Phlox sit across from him.
Why not give up my life? I've only got 5-6 days left. Anyway.
That isn't how we see it.
Let me ask you something, Doc. When you researched Lysarian larvae, did you come across any references to the Velandrian Circle?
They were a group of Lysarian scientists who conducted illegal experiments on symbiotes. They claimed to have developed an enzyme that stopped the rapid aging process.
Is there any truth to it?
Why do you think he kept it a secret?
Doctor?
The enzyme is experimental, with very little empirical evidence to suggest that it works. That's why I didn't mention it.
There's not much evidence, but it exists. The fact is, I may not have to grow old and die in a week. There's a chance that I can live out a normal lifespan. I can't change what happened to him, but maybe I can change what's going to happen to me.
Outside, the Enterprise cruises out of the field, covered in particles. As the ship clears the field, the particles begin to fall off. In Trip's quarters, Sim sits at a desk considering a photograph. The The door chimes.
Come in.
How long have you been staying here?
I was on my way to my room last night, but came here instead.
Archer comes over to the desk, picks up the photograph, and replaces it on the shelf above.
These are Tripp's quarters.
Which is where I belong. I have his memories. I have his feelings. I have his body. How am I not Tripp?
Commander Tucker is lying in sickbay.
Then what am I? Just something you grew in a lab? Does that make it easier for you to condemn me to death?
If you refuse to go through with this, you'll be condemning Tripp to death.
I didn't put him in a coma.
No, but you can save him.
In a way, I will. By saving myself.
Flock says there's almost no chance that the enzyme will work.
My life is at stake. Any chance is worth taking.
But at what cost? It'll take a day to synthesize the enzyme. By that time, your neural tissue won't be compatible with Tripp's anymore. He'll die.
I know.
I can't let that happen.
So what are you going to do? Drag me down to sickbay? Force me onto a bio bed at gunpoint?
If you truly have all of Tripp's memories, you know the answer to that. I don't have to tell you what's at stake. I must complete this mission, and to do that, I need Tripp. Tripp. I'll take whatever steps necessary to save him.
Even if it means killing me?
Even if it means killing you.
You're not a murderer.
Don't make me one.
In engineering, T'Pol supervises repairs with a pad in hand. Sim enters.
I was wondering if there was anything I could still do. Maybe there's a panel I can install or something. I got a few hours to kill before my operation.
You wish to spend your last hours in engineering?
Why not? Two things I care most about are in this room.
If you'd like, the A3 injector port needs replacing.
I'll get right on it.
He walks over to a terminal, looking over his shoulder as he does. On the bridge, Reed sits at his station. Archer enters.
What's the problem?
Crap, sorry. Got caught up in our episode discussion. Someone's rerouted the launch bay controls. We're shut out.
Archer to the launch bay. Come in.
Captain, I'm reading one person in there.
In the launch bay, Sim leans on the hatch of Pod 1, his arms crossed. Archer enters and considers him from the doorway.
I was all ready to do it.
What stopped you?
Where the hell was I going to go? We're nowhere near any habitable planet. Didn't really want to spend the rest of my life floating around in a shuttle pod, which doesn't even have any toilet facilities. Can you imagine a lousier way to spend your old age? Cooped up in that thing, peeing out a bottle. Actually, I can't imagine a worse fate.
What would that be?
Being stuck in there with Malcolm.
Archer looks at the floor. Sim chuckles.
Yeah. It's a screwed up situation.
Yeah, I can't argue with you there.
A lifetime in 8 days. Not that I'm scared of dying, it's just that I can't imagine not being here tomorrow. You know what's really stopped me?
What?
My sister. And she was my sister as much as Tripp's.
I believe that.
I don't want what happened to her to happen to anyone else.
That's why I gave the order to create you.
Do me a favor, when this is over, if Commander Tucker decides to do any more modifications to the engines, tell him to watch his ass.
He leaves, and Archer stands still. In Tucker's quarters, Sim strokes Porthos. The intercom beeps.
Yes,
We're ready for you.
on my way.
He gets up to go, and the door chimes.
May I come in?
He stands aside, and she comes in.
I just wanted to say how much your absence will affect the crew, how much it will affect me.
I appreciate that. All in all, I guess I've had a pretty good life.
T'Pol kisses him.
I guess I couldn't have asked for a better going away present.
In sickbay, Phlox stands before a biobed and a table of instruments, clad in a black medical gown and gloves, with Archer nearby. Sim opens the door, pauses at the doorway, then enters.
I'm sorry I doubted you, Doc.
No need to apologize.
I'm serious. You see, I don't just remember Trip's childhood. I remember mine. You made a damn good father.
You were a damn good son.
You said to me once that commanding a starship was what you were meant to do. I guess this is what I was meant to do. Good luck, Captain.
Thanks.
Goes into Tucker's cubicle.
You owe me one.
Sim returns to lie on the biobed. Phlox injects him and his eyes close. Later in the armory.
He will never forget what he did for us and for the ship he loved so much. We will go forward with renewed determination to complete this mission so that his sacrifice won't just have been for the people on this ship, but for all the citizens of the Earth.
Malcolm and Travis place the lid on the torpedo as the crew looks on. Tucker, now fully recovered, looks on. He's particularly upset. The door to the launch tube slides open and a conveyor belt loads the torpedo into it. A band of red light streaks across the top of the tube, and from the front of the ship, the torpedo flies into space. The end.
Well done, everybody. Another great episode. I think what we'll do is we'll switch straight to credits and then we'll be back with the after show. Are we ready for those credits? Welcome back to Dramatis Personae. We have just finished Similitude, an episode which, unless I'm very much mistaken, raises one or two moral and ethical questions. Did anybody else pick up on that?
No, no idea.
Oh, yeah, okay. You were watching a different episode.
This is pretty much just like a regular Star Trek episode with no problems, you know?
Oh, right. Yeah. I mean,
that is famously the most common type of Star Trek.
Yeah,
right,
I mean, it's
right.
never political, right?
No.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I'm just going to summarize what happened here. And forgive me if I get this wrong. They create a sentient living being in order to save the life of a chum. They then get emotionally attached to him and then say, hey, look, we don't want to murder you, so you just opt to do it, and then it's not murder and we can feel fine about it. And then say, but if you say no to that, we will murder you.
Right.
I got that right? Okay.
Yeah, correct.
So,
Pretty sure.
the trolley problem. Who's come across the trolley problem? This is the idea that you have two railway lines and you have one vehicle traveling down the line, and there's a switch point, and the trolley can either go onto one where there's one person tied to the railway line, or they can go onto the other where there are 5 people tied to the railway line.
You take the red pill, you take the blue pill, you know?
Yeah. would you pull the lever and kill the one person, or would you let it kill the 5 people? And, okay, well, let's answer that question first. So let's just answer that. Would you kill one person, or would you kill 5 people if you had to make that choice?
And what are the characteristics of the people that you
Let's
would
just
agree
leave
to?
it at the 1 or 5 for
Okay,
the first opening question.
Okay, great.
I mean,
I
I
would
would,
crash the trolley, so I'm the only one who died.
That's not an option.
yeah,
Kind of Kobayashi Maru it. Come on.
yeah, that's my answer. Try to
Sorry, Tony Stark. Sometimes there isn't a way out.
Yeah. You have a choice. It either is going to ram into the one person, or it's going to ram into 5.
Life is full of tough choices, so, you know.
I mean, this happens to me all the time. It's, all those difficult
I would kill
situations.
one person because it would save more people.
See?
Okay. That is a
The children
great
of the
answer.
future.
Right.
Well,
that is a
I'm
great
riding the
answer.
trolley, so it's not up to me.
Unless it's a trick question, that way I would just stop the train.
Yeah,
he already said you can't.
unfortunately, we
Aw, dang it.
we can't stop the train. So let me take your answer, which is, I mean, the answer that everybody would go for, because 1 is less than 5, right? But okay, so now there's 5 people that you don't know, and on the other line, it's Max. Short Dad is tied to the other line.
Which one?
Would you let the 5 people die, or would you just take the option to get rid of Short Dad?
You're traumatizing the child.
Unless the one person is somebody you don't like, then
But it's me. So is it, do you not like me, or is it the 5 people you don't know? That's the question.
no.
Oh my god.
I would probably do.
Yeah. It's
Oh, that's a
difficult,
hard
right?
question.
No, it's
Look, I'm not going to ask you to kill Short Dad, because that's mean and nasty and fairly horrible on my part, and almost as bad as what happened in this episode, right? There's no real answer to the question, and that's the point of this. You killing one person is killing one person too many. And it doesn't matter whether you know them or you don't know them. That life has value. And in this case, you've got one person tied to one line and one person tied to the other line. And whichever one you choose, somebody's going to die. And it's a horrible situation. We've seen the situation before with Tubix. Ben, I know you're familiar with the trolley problem. Did you have anything to add to that?
Well, as I just added in the chat, in case I didn't get to say it out loud, another consideration in this is the fact that if the train is going, there's the 5 people on the track. That was already going to happen. But if you pull the switch, then you have made a conscious, active decision that will kill a person. Now, not pulling the switch is also actively, deliberately making a choice to, but like I could see someone comforting themselves with this was going to happen anyway, with or without me, but I can't, like, I would think that would be where someone would freeze and not be able to make a decision.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it's one of those choices that a person hopes they never have to make. And it's why I absolutely would never want to be a starship captain, ever.
Okay, well, that's surprising. I always saw you as the captain of a sort of a mid-sized starship, maybe specializing in second contact. So, having just completely lost my point, having made that joke, I think there's a whole thing here as well. In the UK, we've currently got a government who are trying to make it illegal for people to help refugees who are stranded at sea and in distress.
Oh, that's evil. Oh, that's evil.
Oh, yeah, and in breach of many international treaties. So you know.
Oh my God.
Well, we sort of talk about this in the abstract, but now you've got people who are having to make the choice between saving lives, which is morally the correct thing to do, and breaking the law, which could result in life imprisonment as well, by the way. They're not
disgusting.
even...
This is in Britain?
Yeah, this is in the UK.
Oh, that's bad.
Yeah. Now, I mean, we can talk about the sources of morality and law, but we know for a fact that law and morality aren't the same thing, right? You know, law should be sort of guided by morality, but law isn't morality.
Yeah, but things like maritime law, I feel like you cannot have a functioning planet without international maritime law and like international air law. Like you have to be able to communicate with the rest of the world, like how
I
to
don't
navigate
disagree
those
with you.
spaces. Sorry, I'm talking a lot. I'll shut up.
No. So these are difficult decisions that people have to make. Guys, two small Rexes whose name I don't actually know, so that's slightly embarrassing on my part. But let me ask, how did you find playing that role? So you're basically playing the same role as Short Dad, but how was that? Sort of experiencing somebody else's memories, which is what you were doing, of course.
I think it was cool.
Good.
And
that
that character was fun to play.
It was definitely different from like what other characters I've like played as far as like with friends and stuff.
Very different.
What was different about it? Was it because it was like an adult in a kid's body?
Yeah, it was like you have 3 different people playing the same character, but in different like ages
Mhm.
And phases.
Yeah.
Yeah, and they were starting to realize that they knew more about what happened in the other person's life as well, which must have been interesting. Cool. Well, if I don't have a chance to say thank you to you guys again, and I'm sure we will at the end, I mean, fantastic job, really well done. I mean, you must have been
thank you so much.
You must have been practicing all afternoon because, I mean, you
Nope.
on.
I didn't practice once.
They're a great
behind the curtain.
Yeah,
right?
they're a great cold reader, which is a really good skill in this
they're
business.
both fantastic.
Yeah,
I've
that
argued.
makes it even better. Well done, guys. Archer, how did you feel about your moral quandary?
God, I felt awful. I mean, at least I can say that when I gave the order initially, it wasn't going to result in the Sim's death. Like, it was maybe still morally questionable, but it wasn't a death sentence. And I don't really know what I would do, because, like, I don't know, saving somebody that's important to me versus someone aside, it's very tough. I was just talking to a few people about like Life is Strange, and there's a choice at the end to either it's all right if I use spoilers. Yeah.
What are we spoilers for?
Okay.
What is it?
As far as Life is Strange.
Oh,
So,
yeah, that's fine. Yeah.
Because at the end of the game, you basically have to choose between saving your closest friend or saving the entire town from a storm. And I chose to save my friend instead of the entire town. And I don't know how I feel about that. I don't think there's like an easy, clear, right thing to do. But
also, it's a game.
It's also a game. I didn't actually have to do it. Yeah,
You're not. It's not.
I
as
would
if
probably
you
have to play it twice then, so just to get both endings.
Like, if there is like a punitive judge in the sky, like, he's not holding you accountable for your video game crimes. I'm just gonna say that right now.
That's probably.
Well, I do want to say, though, I actually disagree with something you said there, Randall. You said that when you initially made the decision, it wasn't a death sentence, but it was. It was a death by old age in their terms, but it was still a death sentence. He was going to die no matter what. He was brought to life just to die.
But I guess you could say that about life
Everybody,
in general.
really.
Yeah,
That's true,
having
too.
a baby is a death sentence.
Yes.
Yeah.
This is a whole.
That actually used to be in the Mexica people. That's at least it could be apocryphal, but I've heard that one thing that the midwives would say when the baby was born is that they would they would say to the baby that you have come to suffer and to die, basically, is kind of it was just important for, their belief system, but tell them from the beginning.
Yay.
And it's kind of the only way we've survived as a species, weirdly, too. It's weird. It's weird.
Well, yeah. So the trick there is, do you see the individuals or do you see the whole? We've got this distinction whereby we see the death of an individual as a tragedy, and it very often is a tragedy. I know I've had a couple of friends who have lost near and dear recently, and it's horrible. At the same time, though, if we just grew exponentially as a species, we would be out of space already. There are more people alive now than that have ever lived, more sentient, certainly. But yeah, it's a difficult situation. I'm reminded, actually, of the concept of savior siblings, if you come across those. So these are kids who are conceived via in vitro fertilization to be genetically compatible with the sibling who has a genetic disorder. So the idea here is that effectively the kid is born, and then later on you harvest typically hematopoietic stem cells. So it's a non-fatal procedure in order to transplant them into the other sibling and save the sibling's life.
Well, and it's not even just in those applications. It's also we have CRISPR now, so we can systematically go through and change a DNA pattern. And, ostensibly this is to prevent diseases and stuff, but who's to say that we couldn't change someone's outcomes very dramatically or conduct specious experiments on human beings in this way,
Yeah. I mean, the other thing is, of course,
super soldiers is what you're saying.
Well, I'm not saying that, but I'm also not saying that.
Yeah. So sibling saviors are legal in the UK. Although I think although it's legal, that doesn't mean it's normal. And there's a lot of ethical safeguards around doing that. So yeah, and I think this sort of started to be talked about the time this was happening in the Star Trek. So I think this is about the sort of, yeah. So there was a novel called My Sister's Keeper by Jodie Picoult, who and that's about a savior sibling, and that came out in 2004. So this was definitely high on the agenda in 2003 when this episode of Enterprise was written. So it's a thing. So I would normally end with a round robin question, and I think that's going to be very, very difficult this evening. What I will do is I'll go to Lita and Steffi and Sarah and just see if you have anything to add to the conversation we've had this evening. Not the most cheerful of conversations. I have tried to keep it upbeat, though. Lita.
Go ahead, Lita.
No, Sarah. Go, Sarah.
Go ahead. I'll wait.
I was just going to say, it's interesting that this came up with the trolley problem and everything, because I just recently rewatched The Good Place. And if anybody hasn't seen that, they deal a lot with moral philosophy in there, and specifically the trolley problem and the variations on the trolley problem, because there's always the, save one, or kill one to save the many. But I mean, there's the matter of switching it up, and let's say you're a doctor and you have 5 patients that all need organ transplants, but you have to kill a healthy person to get them. It's still the same concept. You're still killing one to save 5. It's different because that person isn't, there's not a guaranteed, chance. It's very interesting to me, and I really like I like moral philosophy. So, but yeah, that's really all I have to say.
Yeah, maybe we should do a moral philosophy chat at some point. We can start at Augustine, and we can start further back than that. Actually, we can go right back. Hey, that could be fun. How can we work this into Star Trek? Maybe we do it. Somebody's probably already done it. Anyway, Lita, did you have something to add?
I do, but it's completely unrelated to all of this.
Well, that's excellent.
That's a little more positive, yay! Because
I can cope with that.
I lost my dad like 12 years ago. So I was doing fine until we get to that last little thing about, I remember my dad, but you were the best dad ever. That about broke me. And just kind of that like emotional connection that they've kind of been like, oh, look at this relationship with Sim and Archer. And then to throw that in there right at the very end, it's like, please take the knife out of my heart now.
Yeah.
But just being able to build those connections, knowing exactly what the end result was going to be, is kind of almost like a little optimistic boop in the middle of this moral gray soup that we've created here. That's basically any connection that you build is ultimately going to end with one or the other person no longer being there, whether it's a death or otherwise. So just kind of having that acknowledgement right at the end, I thought was really kind of a lovely little moment wedged into the trolley track right before everything goes bad. So,
yeah.
It's really nice.
Yeah, and of course, I feel like cynically this sort of foreshadows what happens in the final episode of Enterprise. So for those of you who haven't seen it, and I know there are a couple of people who haven't, the last episode of Enterprise, despite being one of the most disappointing episodes in all history and ruining it by having Riker and Deanna making it all into a holodeck simulation, feels like, was it Dallas when he woke up from his coma? Anyway, aside that to one side, of course, they killed Trip Tucker. And I wonder what would have happened. Why could they not repeat this pattern then? We don't know that they didn't, of course, because we don't know what happened in season 5. Stephanie, did you have anything to add?
I think I just want to say a few things about T'Pol in this episode and T'Pol in general. I have very mixed feelings about T'Pol because one of the things I like about these later portrayals of Vulcans, like one of the things I love about Tuvok in Voyager, is that they kind of went from portraying Vulcans as calm and composed and just kind of naturally not having emotions. Tuvok showed that actually no, a Vulcan in their natural state is kind of raging with emotions and they're constantly fighting to suppress them. And they kind of carried it on with T'Pol, but they mostly did it as in the context of her relationship with Tucker, and it's like the emotions that she's trying to suppress are like, damn, I just need a man in my life kind of thing,
That Trillium D, doesn't she?
Yeah, yes. Nevertheless, I like this episode, and I like the emotions. Same as with what Lita was saying, I like the emotional beats in it, and I like that T'Pol chose to, knowing that Sim had like minutes left to live, she did something for him that would give him, make him happy in his last few minutes, Anyway,
the kids on the show.
We all deserve a happy ending. That's all. That's all I have to say.
Well, anyway, I just wish T'Pol had was given a few more dimensions throughout the series.
Yeah. I think here actually she's kind of in a difficult position because she's clearly developed feelings for Trip. But I suspect she doesn't know she's developed feelings because she's been suppressing them for so long. That's really what's happened here. Is they've kind of used this sim to trigger, we know that there's a relationship after this. But could that have happened with somebody who wasn't effectively disposable? And I'm not sure it could have done.
Oof.
I think it needed T'Pol to be able to throw something away and experiment with it and then come back to it, which is a little bit depressing.
Yeah, I definitely had that thought watching it, and especially doing the read through. Is I think that's a big part of it. Is that T'Pol was given the ability to kind of experiment with that, because there wasn't going to be any repercussions other than in her own head for that.
And that's the definition of play, of course. You know, why do baby bears play? Well, it's a way to experiment with the environment without the chances of being hurt, so that when they come up against something that's genuinely dangerous, they can deal with it. And we should all play, and that's one of the reasons I actually love doing this show. It's because it's a form of playing, exploring emotions and other people's states, and finding out things about myself in the process. And it turns out that what I learn is that I'm a heartless bastard. However, that said, we have some feedback from the lovely Zach, who is actually in our cast and has apparently watched the episode. So thanks, Zach. We really appreciate that. I also know that Tall Dad has been watching, so that's Alejo. So thank you, Alejo. We appreciate that. However, Zach says he finds the most ethically disturbing thought in this episode is the lack of ability to give consent that the clone had. And this is true. So basically, Archer says, don't make me a murderer, consent to being murdered. And of course, if you have a choice, a Hobson's choice, this is known as in the UK, I don't know if that's a transatlantic thing, Hobson's choice, well, either you get murdered or you get murdered. That's not choice. There's no agency for that person there. They're not really consenting. You're just doing this as a way to feel better about it. So thank you for that, Zach. We completely agree with you. He had no agency whatsoever, and so he didn't have a positive option. He had no alternative. Sarah, I want to thank you for your £20 donation to AKT, and I'm going to mention them again. We are currently at 100 of your Earth pounds, and we want to make it to 150 of your Earth pounds. So it doesn't have to be a big round number. Make it a small number. Give a couple of quid. It's fantastic. And then we are going to go, what's the next episode? We actually haven't decided yet, so we can't tell you. But it is in 4 weeks' time, and it will be a Voyager episode. If you have an idea for an episode that you haven't seen us do yet, feel free to drop it in the comments below. I want to remind you, this is going to be my cheesy YouTube moment. Like and subscribe. And also, finally, see you in 4 weeks. And until then, ex Astris Beatitudo. Live long, prosper, and see you next time.
Okay.